So we'll get to company and we'll spend a lot of time there because obviously there's a lot of founders and entrepreneurs in the audience, or if they're not founders, entrepreneurs already, they're aspiring ones. But let's start from where the story begins. So literally on Wikipedia, it says you grew up in a farm in Pakistan.
Yeah. It's funny, when you're at YC, you interface with lots and lots of founders, and so that Wikipedia article is written by a founder at some point. I literally don't, I don't know who or when, but it must have come from a talk like this because it's a bit of a transcription. But yeah, we were from a small farming village and came to the U.S. in the late '80s. Moved to the Detroit area, basically right outside of Detroit, and then the suburbs, and very much grew up in the shadow of the automotive industry. And because of that, I went to the General Motors Institute for undergrad, which is now known as Kettering University. I think we were the first year that the school changed its name. So I applied as GMI and I graduated as Kettering. And then that kind of got my career into a specific path. And then I think probably the right decision I made was right before I went to business school at HBS, I got some feedback from a manager at GM who said, the future is you should get a non-technical degree. And he was an HBS alum, so that was, that was positive. He also wrote my recommendation, but he also said, I think the car business is a very difficult business to be in, and you should get out of the car business. And I'd gone to GMI. I was working at General Motors, and I worked at Bosch in Michigan. I was a mechanical engineer, very much in the car business. So I made a very pragmatic kind of shift over to software. And I think, the takeaway lesson there is there's a HBS professor, Richard Tedlow, who says it's better to be mediocre in a high growth industry than to be, really exceptional in a mediocre industry. And the class he teaches, the history of capitalism, basically goes through the history of the United States and each of these eras where there's a big industry. Silicon Valley is the industry of today, but that's happened like roughly 10 times before. That happened with steel, it happened with rail, it happened with oil, it happens all these different industries in America, retail, et cetera. And so the punchline is, go to Silicon Valley because that's the thing that's exploding. And I think that turned out to be a really, really good bet. And I think the rest of the outcomes have been a output of that decision. And then, started multiple companies, et cetera.